Okay, Mr. Landis here, Distance Learning, week 4. Here we are. We're entering the part 2 of our causes of the Civil War. Um, part 2, you're going to see that I've labeled this to help you out, part 2A. I'm going to be having a couple videos in this module. This is the first one, part 2A. I'm always going to put that 2 in the top left-hand corner of your screen here so you can keep track. I know there's a lot of detail to keep track of, but I'm going to do that to try and help you out as you navigate these sessions and these sections. I know it's new, but we'll figure it out. Okay, our goal today, here's a big question. How did the novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin, increase tension between North and South? That's going to be our goal. How did a book cause a nation to move closer to war? That's the question we're asking, right? About the tension between the regions, right? Sectional tension, regional tension, North and South. How did it push us closer to war? Here's what we're going to see. The North saw the evils of slavery in this book. They were like exposed to it. They went, oh! And then the South felt that it was a gross exaggeration, right? It was a misrepresentation of real life, an important one because it changed how people thought things occurred. Remember this, that it's not always what's true that matters, it's what people think is true that matters in terms of reactions or laws or decisions for a country. And this is going to have a significant impact on the way that the laws proceed as we move closer to the war itself. Okay, to step back a little bit, review the Compromise of 1850. Remember, there's 4 key parts to it. We've got the creepiest senator of all time, Henry Clay. Look at this incredible face. We've got 4 big things. The ban on slave trade in D.C. Okay, that's a concession right by the South. We've got a strict fugitive slave law. Okay, that's something that they're going to get. And we're going to cover that, review that in a second. Here's a concession, right? Citizens who live in Utah and New Mexico, right, can vote on slavery there. Okay, that's another thing we're going to give to the South. Okay, so these are sort of right here on the right side. These are things the North sort of gives up, right? The North gives into a stricter fugitive slave law, and they let slavery be determined by the people who live there in these territories. Here's what the North gets under this compromise. California is a free state. Remember, California as a free state is what caused all this. California wants to come in. We've got to keep things equal in the Senate. Remember, this is about power, okay? And then another concession, we talked about the slave trade ban in D.C. That's another thing that sort of the North gets, right? The South gives up. Now, of these 4 things, the top right here, the fugitive slave law, is going to be the most controversial, okay? Again, I'm just reviewing this. Remember that the fugitive slave law effectively turned the average citizen into a slave catcher. It turned the average citizen into an enforcer, right? Here's why. Take a look at the primary source. It shall be the duty of all the marshals and deputy marshals to obey and execute all warrants issued under the provisions of this act. What this did is, at the federal level, guys, it forced policemen, regular policemen, right? Let's say, the Warrenton police, to enforce and be in charge of helping to recapture property. So that put a northern police officer, northern sheriff, in the role of a slave catcher under law. This is crazy. Look at the punishment. Any person who shall knowingly and willingly obstruct, hinder, or prevent any person from arresting such a fugitive shall be subject to a fine not exceeding $1,000 and imprisonment not exceeding 6 months. So it's not just that you were forced, there was a punishment involved. Again, this is what the North hated so much about the Fugitive Slave Act, right? This just review. It forced them into that role of being a slave catcher, and this is incredibly frustrating and makes them very upset. Not just because many of them were anti-slavery, although some were, right? It's that even if they were, let's say, not fans of racial equality, which most people weren't, they were certainly against a way of life they disagreed with being forced upon them, right? They being felt like they were made to participate in the slave trade and the slavery process. A quick cartoon to look at here. We've got a fugitive slave law effects. I just want to point out to you those who were against it, a reason they were so against it. You can see that the justification by the use of the Bible, which we're going to come up again in a second, from the North. Southerners often used the Bible to justify slavery. They had to justify it more and more as it got more deeply rooted in the economy. And Northerners say, oh, okay, we can play that game too. For example, here's a passage from Deuteronomy. This is Old Testament, right? Old Testament Hebraic code. Thou shalt not deliver unto the master his servant, which has escaped from his master unto thee. He shall dwell with thee, even among you in that place which he shall choose in one of thy gates where it liketh him best. Thou shalt not oppress him. That's the old school King James. Here's what the Northerners are saying. Oh, you want to use the Bible to justify your way of life, Southerners? Okay, let's go Bible. Let's go Old Testament. Let's go Hebraic law. Here we go. What does it say? right? If your slave runs away, don't go try and recapture him. This is to mock, right, the slave catcher code, the effects of the fugitive slave law. It went against the Bible. Also, this cartoon shows us it went against the Declaration. We hold that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator, right? We know this passage. This often helps us answer the question, did people at the time realize the conflict between the Declaration of Independence and, right, the issue of slavery? Yes, they did. They did. And remember, this is what we talked about, what Joseph Ellis, historian, talks about as the long view of the Constitution and the Declaration. People say, Mr. Lance, America has been from the beginning a systematic racism has been programmed into it. It was in the Constitution, it was in the Declaration. Okay, well, that's one version, one way to look at it. Another way to say is that, well, the founders, yes, had views about slavery that many of them knew were going to be proven by history to be not only morally wrong, but they knew at the time were morally wrong. The system was set up with the Constitution allowed for that to be eradicated. And that's what we're marching towards. And what you're seeing is the people in 1850 are realizing, oh my gosh, it's been there all along, and we've ignored it, and our forefathers ignored it, and we're not going to ignore it. Okay, that's the beauty of this cartoon. Okay, into the scene comes the main focus of today, which is Uncle Tom's Cabin. You're looking at a younger Harriet Beecher Stowe. Here she is. She is from the North. She did spend some time in the border states, okay? So she has experience somewhat with slavery, right, in terms of, the Ohio, Kentucky, the Ohio River border. But she writes this book. It becomes a bestseller called Uncle Tom's Cabin. You read about it. You read a passage from it. I'm going to show you that in a second, a passage I'm going to pull out. It is a bestseller. It's hard to find a book. I want to call it the Harry Potter of her day, but that's, not really true because there was so much more to it. In terms of popularity, it was like that. People had very strong reactions to it, which is, again, not a good Harry Potter connection. People love Harry Potter. If you don't, you're a liar. People love this book or they hated it. And the reasons why are the purpose of today. Those who loved it, and I should say love it, meaning felt that it had such great merit because it warranted a reaction. When you read a book about a way of life that's terrible, you have a reaction. Northerners begin to feel this reaction. Southerners are going to say that it's an exaggerated misrepresentation, and they're going to hate and they're going to fear the Northern reaction to it. So let me show you why. Here's a quote from it. This is one of the climactic scenes in the scene. Simon, the evil slave owner, is about to murder and kill a Tom who will heroically refuse to give up the location of some runaway slaves, right? As you read about, he smites him, he kills him. And here's where Harriet Beecher Stowe goes on sort of a side tangent. She says this: scenes of blood and cruelty are shocking to our ear and heart. And yet, O my country, these things are done under the shadow of thy laws, O Christ. Thy church sees these almost in silence. Now, this is like a narrative style aside. She's talking to you, the reader. Okay, she's saying you are letting this happen. This is one of the great passages that showcases why this book has such strong reactions. Northerners read this scene, then they read this and said, OMG, this is me. She's talking to me. I'm standing in silence, right? I call myself a Christian, she says later, right? You call yourself a Christian, you let this happen? Southerners, most of which, maybe most people this time claim to be Christians, are reading this and they are pulling their hair out because they believe her representation is inaccurate, okay? As you read, Simon is portrayed as Satan. Thomas portrayed as Jesus, right? There's this good and evil thing. This is why it causes such a strong reaction. So much anger, so much hate over this book because of its portrayal of slavery, okay? So we ask this question, again, how does a book move a nation closer to war? This is how they do it. You write a book that is controversial, that shows the evil of something, and even if it's not true for every slave, which we know it wasn't, because many slaves lived in different circumstances, all under domination, all under subjugation. Many lived Tom's life, okay? And Northerners, even if it was one, the Northerners are going to say, I cannot believe this is happening. How can I live in a nation where this is existing? Okay, this is the great question of, can freedom and slavery coexist? The answer is, we're coming to realize in America, it cannot, okay? So what we're walking towards is the war. We're walking towards also a national conscience. People are beginning to realize, I cannot believe this is occurring. I can't believe this is happening in the North. And at the same time, Southerners are beginning to say, we must protect this. They have to find more justifications about it from the Bible, from law, from custom, from all those things. And this book exposes, and again, further, you want to think another metaphor. When I was chopping up this giant tree next to my house, the way to split wood is you put a wedge in, right? A wedge. And a wedge cannot split the tree by itself. The wedge needs, right, boom, boom, right, a hammer, a big sledgehammer. This is another sort of a pounding of this. This book is a pounding of that wedge. And that wedge is, can freedom and slavery coexist? We're increasingly realizing the answer is no, it cannot. Okay? Hope you enjoyed this teaching and our journey to the Civil War. I love the Civil War because I believe it helps to solve the great injustice that the founders refused to or would claim they were unable to, slavery. We're kind of finally into the time where we're going to do it. It's going to happen. It's going to cost a lot of people's lives, but it's going to be done. I'll see you next time.